Hey everyone, welcome to my Firewall Basics video. Hopefully through this video you'll learn some of the essential tasks and concepts that you'll need to master for this course. And whether you're just getting started or looking to brush up your skills, I think you'll be covered. First up, we'll walk through how to connect to the firewall. Then we'll look at how to change the IP address on an interface, how to find the IP address of the internet/cloud. You'll need to know that as a number of the labs want you to do some of the test case validation using the internet or cloud IP address. And lastly, we'll talk about access control lists, how they work, and how individual firewall rules within a control list work. So as you can see, I've logged into the InfoSec Learning portal already. I've already launched the CyberSim virtual workstation. That's just pops up in a browser window. So once you have that virtual workstation launched, you will also launch your GNS3 environment. Inside of GNS3, you can do a file, open project, and select the project file that's applicable for whatever lab you're working on. So this is the project 1 stepping stone file that I have. The only things I've done so far, besides launch all the nodes by hitting this green button, is select this button here to show and hide, to show the interface labels. You can show and hide the interface labels with that. So that comes in handy later on in one of your projects. So I've launched the Edge firewall and got that booted up. The reason I did that is because you'll want to see what this LAN IP address is. That's necessary because that's the IP that we're going to connect to. Next, I launched the customer service PC1 because I know it's fully functional and operational in this lab, and we'll use that to connect to the Edge firewall. So once that's booted up and you log in, just open a web browser and navigate to the LAN IP address. You'll use the credentials that you have back here on the InfoSec portal to log into that firewall once you connect to it. You may be prompted with a invalid certificate. So you'll have a warning from Firefox. Just hit the advanced button and then accept risk and continue. That'll get you to the login screen and you can log in with the root and password credentials. So that's connecting. Then to change the interface IP address, we just need to go to interfaces here on the left side and then LAN or WAN. So we'll do LAN for this example. It's going a little slow. You'll notice that sometimes depending on the load of the InfoSec Learning portal, how many people are working in it. We're going quite slow here. Okay. So we can see that the interface, the LAN interface is enabled. We can see that it has a static IPv4 configuration. And when you scroll down at the static IPv4 configuration, you'll see the IP address. Same IP address that we saw in the command line over here. So if you ever need to change it, this is where you would do that. Here's your subnet mask or your CIDR notation that you can change if need be. And right here you can change the IP address and save it. You can do the same with the WAN. Another thing that we need to do in here, we need to figure out what is this IP address for the internet/cloud. You can't just click into this node, so all you have to do is hit interface, overview, select the WAN interface, and it's nice enough that it's got this IPv4 gateway auto-detected for the WAN interface. So that shows us what the next hop is. So the internet/cloud IP address is 192.168.122.1 in the project 1 stepping stone file, project file. So you can do the same action if you need it, if you need this information in any of the other labs. The WAN IP is 122.122.1 192.168.122.6, as you can see here on the left side in the CLI and in the GUI. And again, that next hop gateway is 122.1 or 192.168.122.1. Okay. So access control lists, what are they and how do they function? So we can go down to the firewall and to the rules. And then you can select the rules based on which interface. And the way that OPNsense works is it's rules, if you select WAN or select LAN, it's rules processing traffic coming into that interface. So if we select LAN, then that means it's a rule for traffic coming into the LAN interface. And as you can see, there's two permit rules. So if you look at this little green arrow, it says pass, meaning permit, or default allow, LAN to any. So the source is defined as LAN, so it's anything from the LAN side of the firewall, and the LAN being the local area network. So it's literally anything in this lab. This is the LAN, E1. So essentially this means any IPv4 or IPv6 traffic coming from the trusted side or the LAN side of the firewall to the external, or anywhere for that matter. But in this case, there's only two interfaces configured that they'll be permitted to go outbound. So those are two rules configured on the LAN interface, and how these work in the access control list explanation perspective is as traffic comes into the firewall, it looks at the first rule, says, does it match? If it does, great. If it doesn't, it moves on to the next rule. So if you had IPv6 traffic, the firewall would look at this rule first, say, oh, it doesn't match. It doesn't match the protocol. And then it would move on to this rule and say, oh, it does match. So in this case, it's a IPv6 from the LAN and pretty wide open with all these any's. So it would match this rule and be permitted outbound. So as we talk more about how access control lists work, I went ahead real quick and put in a block rule on the WAN interface. And what this represents is a very small subset of what could be a GeoIP block. And in industry, there are databases that you can download a lot of times automatically from trusted database resources that have malicious network groups defined, so to speak, and quite honestly, China is a malicious actor in the global stage. So one of their network addresses or prefixes is 58.58.0/0 or .0.0/16, and so I made a block rule for that really quick, put it on the WAN interface, and said basically any IPv4 traffic from 58.58/16 to anything inbound, let's block it. And that's indicated by this block rule right here, right? So the way ACLs work is if this is the first rule, that's the first thing. If traffic from China from that network comes in, it will get blocked, and we won't have to worry about it. So the next step then would be, all right, well, what traffic do we want to come from the outside inbound? And I guess we can go through how to configure a rule real quick. I guess if we just pretend that this FTP server is, actually like a web server, and we're hosting a website for the outside world, we would just hit this add button. And I apologize, this can be rather slow at times, so bear with me and bear with the lab. So we added a rule. So we're in the configuration of that rule. We want the traffic to pass. it's sourcing from the WAN side, it's coming in, it's IPv4. The protocol, since we're doing web, we want it to be TCP, and the source, anybody on the internet, and the destination, just as an example, we'll pick a LAN address. I'm sorry, we will pick a specific IP address on the network, so single host or network. And I didn't go look at the IP address, but we'll just, assume that it's, something, right? And we'll just make it up for now. So if that web server was 192.168.1.1, this is where you would put it in, and /32. Host address is always a /32 when we're talking IPv4. And the destination port, because it's web traffic, will be, I'm sorry, the window's just jumping around here. We want to limit it to HTTPS only. So HTTPS. If you wanted to do it manually, you could go into other, and you could define it by typing it in, and that would still just be 443. But for this, we'll since it's predefined application ports here, we'll just use the predefined. So you do that, and we'll just call it web server inbound allow, and hit save. Okay, so now we have our very basic access control list where we have our geo IP block. We're blocking anybody from China coming in, and here we have our very basic inbound anybody from the internet source or port to our web server, hypothetical, and its destination port of 443. So we have to understand that the destination port is what's key. The web server, or the end resource that traffic is trying to reach, is what is hosting the service or application, and that means that that server has the web server service running on it and is listening on the port that your rule will permit traffic to go to. So hopefully that helps. Then that's why the destination port is key. So we won't worry about the source port, because normally that is dynamically generated from the user's computer as they initiate that traffic using ephemeral ports. And if you're not sure what ephemeral ports are, they're ports up in the high, up above 1024, up into the 65,000 range that can be used. So any source IP address with any source port can reach the destination web server at the 443 HTTPS protocol. So that, in short, wraps everything up. If you have any questions, please let me know.